I am the Executive Vice President of Transformation and Technology for Ann Inc. Ann Inc., for those of you who are familiar with the women's fashion industry, is the corporate entity that oversees the operations of two very popular brands in the United States, Ann Taylor and Loft. I have been with the company almost 6 years now, having more than 20 years worked in the IT industry, most of it in the fashion and apparel space. So a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon is directly coming from my experiences working as an IT professional, a leader in the IT organization, and partnering with global organizations in the fashion industry to transform their work. About a year ago, when I was at the time the CIO at Ann Taylor and had been for 5 years, I was part of an ongoing long-term strategy discussion that was born out of the difficult recession that we went through both in the United States and globally. And we had come up with a ton of great ideas as a leadership team on how we could grow our business and transform it, coming out of a difficult time where affluent customers of our brands had been hit pretty hard. And one of the things that dawned on us as we came out of those sessions was we had a laundry list of incredible ideas, but we didn't really have a good way of executing that internally. And so the CEO approached me and asked me if I'd be willing to lead transformation for the corporation, not from an IT perspective, but from an organizational change perspective, knowing that, of course, she knew that a lot of the initiatives were going to require IT support, and so that was going to help me at least know a little bit about what was going on. But the thing, as I thought about it, and I didn't think about it very long, I just simply kind of said, okay, that sounds fine. But the thing about it that was interesting to me was stepping out of the IT role into a cross-functional role leading transformation for the company was that I would no longer be defending the IT organization from all of the critics as to why we weren't able to be as successful changing as we needed to be, but instead I would become now the critic of the IT organization, which is an interesting place to be. So what I really want to share with you today are a few of what I think are really important characteristics that I've learned not only through success, but largely through failure during my career working for organizations who have been continuously trying to transform and change how they operate. So the first one is all about getting it done and getting it done quickly. I think if any of you are CIOs in the audience, and I'm a CIO, I've been a CIO, most of us made a living for a long time implementing really large-scale, really difficult ERP-like projects for a long time. And those things were, generally speaking, all about efficiency. And if you haven't realized it already, and I'm sure you have, efficiency is table stakes now. And it's all about growth, it's all about differentiation, it's all about adding direct value. And so the days of the multi-year, multifaceted efficiency initiatives, or as we used to call them, ERP projects, are well behind us. And now it's all about iterating quickly and introducing change quickly into an organization. And if you're not able to make the jump from kind of the monolithic, large projects, large initiatives involving massive amounts of people and huge steering committees, then you're probably going to find yourself and your organization in a very difficult place. I was recently talking to the CFO, or the ex-CFO of a very large multinational consumer products organization who was asked by his CEO a long time ago, actually it was, to take over a failing ERP initiative. And it was failing because it was taking a really long time, and it was costing a lot more than they said it was going to cost, which we've all been there before. And one of the things he said to me that was really interesting was that the steering committee for the project when he took over was over 100 people. 100 people. And one of the first things he did is he took the 100-person steering committee and he made it 4. And that decision in and of itself really, really helped the project pick up pace and move forward. So urgency is something that I think is one of the most important characteristics of effective transformation. Second thing is trust. So ideas come from sometimes teams, but many times from individuals. The execution of those ideas almost always comes from teams and groups of people. And one of the things that I've learned in my career is that it's really important that that group of people that you're working with to achieve a common goal trust one another. Now, it doesn't mean that they all have to be best friends. It doesn't mean that they have to go out together on weekends or anything like that. But they all need to share a common goal and align around that. People generally are coming from different places. They have different agendas. They have different ways of working. But they need to trust one another. And one of the litmus tests that I try to apply as I lead transformation for Ant Inc. is the team willing to go out to dinner with each other at least once a week? Because if they're not willing to do that, then there's probably a chance that they just don't trust one another because they just don't want to be around one another. And I think it's important that in order to lead effective change that we trust one another. So this morning, Malcolm Gladwell talked a lot about risk and the importance of taking risk. Nothing material happens anymore without taking risk. And it's, when you think of transformation, I mean, it's not just change. Transformation is a very dramatic form of change, and therefore, it's inherent that transformation include risk. And so, in order to take risks and be successful at doing that, there has to be a tolerance in your organization for that risk. And I can tell you, after working in the fashion industry for a long time, it's very interesting. When it comes to making product, we take lots of risks. We're very innovative. But when it comes to executing change in how we go to market, how we function, how we operate, we tend to be on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where we don't like to take a lot of risks. And so developing a culture, developing a capacity for risk tolerance, knowing that it's okay to fail, and that is not the end-all, be-all, is really, really important. Your teams need to know that it's okay to make mistakes, and that risk is something that is tolerated in your organizations. So empowerment is something that, as the fourth characteristic, is really, really something that I'm passionate about. As I said earlier, the story about the CFO at the Global Consumer Products brand and how he was able to take a really, really large initiative with lots of people and help it get on a successful track by making it smaller. We hear a lot the terms collaboration used as an effective way of working. And I really do honestly believe in collaboration. I think it's an essential component for organizations in ways of working to move forward and do so successfully. But I think it often gets collaboration often gets confused with consensus. And there's collaboration and consensus are not the same thing at all. I believe consensus is a killer of transformation, is a killer of change. Because I think too often organizations are too concerned about making sure that everybody agrees with every decision that is made in order to effectively execute change. And the reality is, again, because people are coming from different places, they have different points of view, they may have different agendas, different things that they're trying to get out of change and transformation. The reality is not everybody's going to agree. So I think it's important to collaborate to make sure that you're talking to your customers, both whether they're external customers or internal customers, and you're getting all of that input and that feedback. But ultimately, change, and if you're going to do it rapidly, if you're going to have a sense of urgency, is going to have to come at times without having everybody agree. And so I think it's really important that you empower small groups of people who feel like they can make decisions and feel like they don't have to talk to their boss or their boss's boss or their boss's boss's boss and get 3, 4, 5 layers of approval within these hierarchical organizations in order to move forward and affect change on behalf of your organization. I think it's really, really critical that you empower small teams of people to affect change. And the last characteristic that I think is critical and clearly the most important is really an attitude. It's about being humble, having some humility. I had a mentor many, many years ago who hired me as a programmer. And part of the requirement to be hired in that role at this particular company was to take a test. And it was a test to see how effective of a programmer you are. I'm trying to remember, I think it was either Fortran or RPG or one of these languages from many, many years ago that we don't use anymore. And I took the test, and I got a phone call, and it was from the HR organization. They said, well, we have good news and bad news. And I said, okay. They said, would you like the good news? I said, well, I'll give you the bad news first. They said, well, you failed the test. I said, oh boy. I guess I'm not that surprised because I'm really not that great of a programmer. They said, the good news is you're hired. We'd like to make you an offer. And so I said, great, fantastic. When do I start? So I came in to the office, and I met with the CIO. And he said to me, he said, listen, you failed the test. I said, yeah, I heard that. He said, do you know why we hired you? And I said, no. And he said, I want you to remember one thing. He says, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. And that is something that has never, ever been lost on me as I've worked within teams and organizations and led people. It's not always the smartest people that get the job done. It's the ones that people want to work with that can help you change and move things forward. And so I think having a sense of humility, knowing when you're wrong, being able to learn from that, admit it, getting credit from your peers for doing that, and moving forward is probably the most important characteristic that I can think of in terms of effectively leading and executing change in this modern world. So I think I've gone over by a minute or so, but I just want to close by thanking everybody for listening. I'll be available afterwards if anybody has any questions that you don't get answered through the tweets. And good luck to all of you in your endeavors. Thanks.